Welcome to the Rebooting Business podcast, where we discuss how businesses can reboot, rebuild, and come back bigger and stronger than ever before in a post-COVID-19 reality. And now, here's your host, David Somerfleck.
And hello, my name's David Somerfleck. I'm your host, and welcome to another episode of Rebooting Business. Today, my guest is Melissa Pyrch. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You sure are.
Thank you. How are you doing today, Melissa? And please detail what it is and what it is that you do and how you do it.
Sure. So I am a high school English teacher. I specialize in teaching 10th grade and 12th grade seniors in high school. I also teach a public speaking elective to a large population of seniors each year. And I've been doing this job in New York for over 20 years.
Wow. Well, props to you for doing it. I know you probably hear that on a daily basis. So how are things going right now? What's the status of public education where you are geographically?
Well, as most of us experienced last year, we were pulled from our classrooms about mid-March, and we started an online platform through the rest of the year, which was a challenge. I mean, we had a few days to turn everything we do upside down and serve our kids the best way that we could without really much training and much knowledge of how a lot of this technology worked in education. So it was a challenge.
Was it a challenge because the organization, or was it because of the technology that, hey, not everybody knows how to use Blackboard or Google Meet or whatever the school board in that area says you can use?
So I think on a high school level, we were a little bit more fortunate because we typically used an online platform where we posted a lot of resources. We posted daily assignments.
Yeah.
So we did have that in place. It's just that the nature of being a teacher, and I'm sure we all remember from just being in school, the nature of good teaching is the connections and the community that you create in your classroom. And once that goes away, it becomes a challenge to connect with kids when you're connecting through a screen, sometimes once a week, sometimes not at all if kids didn't have the technology in place or couldn't perform in the ways that we needed them to online. So it was just navigating all this new space and really taking a job that needs that community and figuring out how to make it work.
So are they, where you are geographically, are they teaching online? Is it in person, or is it some kind of combination of the two, or has school already started where you are?
Yeah, so I'm about an hour outside of Manhattan, and I'm in a suburb of New York. And what's happening here is many schools have decided that they need to go virtual for the first few weeks and kind of hold off their in-person learning until either the beginning of October or they're really not sure about start dates. The district that I'm in is small enough that we were able to say, okay, K through 5, you're in every single day, and we're going to split classes. And as a high school teacher, I'm going to be seeing all of my students on a rotating basis in a hybrid schedule, which is what a lot of schools are going towards. So they're virtual some of the time, but they will have some contact in school once, maybe twice a week, depending on their schedules and the different districts here in the suburbs of New York. So it's a challenge, and every district is facing a different way of making school work for the beginning anyway.
I mean, is it overreacting if you're a parent, or for that matter, another teacher or a substitute teacher for that matter? Because I was a substitute teacher.
Right.
I tried teaching 6th grade language arts, and I think I lasted half the academic year. I was not equipped for it. you know. But is it wrong if you're a teacher or a substitute teacher or parent to be in total freak out mode?
I think that we're all walking into this school year with apprehension because for most of us, we haven't been in closed spaces with many people. So this is the first time we're doing this, and it's a little bit overwhelming. We're walking around. Today was our first day back as professionals. Everybody's wearing masks. Our large scale
Mm.
meetings are on Zoom. So, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different feel around the building. But I also think that being together in some capacity is really where we need to move in that direction if we ever are going to see our ways out of this pandemic.
Yeah, that's the tough part. And I think so
Yeah,
socially, I mean, it's a given that kids who are growing up need to learn to socialize, but
sure.
it's also a question of what's at stake and how do you do that in a way that's safe. Can they do it? I mean, I know I don't want you to talk about your district if you can't. So maybe there's a way to talk about outside of that.
Yeah, I think what we're doing, and I don't know that anyone has the answer to that question. Is it safe? I don't know. I think that we're going to try, and then we're going to know where we're at once we're in it, much like as we open businesses, as we open gyms, as we open nail and hair salons and things,
Mm,
you don't know until you're in it what the results of it are going to be. And I'm hoping that we are able to open in this slow manner and then continue to open because the results are positive. That's my great hope. Is it safe? I don't know if we're going to know until we're in it. And the governor put in a bunch of things in place that we're all following to the best of our, the best that we can. And we're going to hope that it's going to be enough.
what do you think parents can do to be as supportive as they can, not just for the teachers, but obviously for their own kids as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of this, well, first of all, I think parents are frustrated as I am. My own children are not going to school right now. Parents are frustrated because it's a domino effect, right? Kids
Yeah.
can't go to school, parents can't go to work, and then how are we making our communities run and work? So I understand the frustration that parents are having because their work schedules are being thrown off. And that being said, it's nobody's fault that we're in this pandemic. It's not the teachers that are to blame. It's not the school districts that are to blame. We're trying to follow the protocol put in place by the powers that be to keep everybody safe. So I think the first thing is we need to stop pointing a finger at somebody. We're in a national pandemic,
Right,
right?
right.
So there's no one I wish there was someone to blame because then we could fire that person, but that's just not the nature of what we're in right now. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing, and I know I'm doing this with my own children, whatever you're faced with, whether it's virtual learning or it's a hybrid model or it's going back in full capacity, you as the parent have to really be the model that whatever you're walking into, we're going to make it work. We're going to be positive and we're going to learn as much as we possibly can and have as much fun as we possibly can. And at some point, things will get better, but we're going to make this great. And I know that's a challenge for parents because parents are filled with so much worry and stress, but putting that onto your kids, not going to make anybody, have a great, it's not going to work for anybody. We have to really be careful about what we project onto our kids and really try to stay as positive as we can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely can empathize. Let's talk for a couple minutes about your book. What is your book about? Why did you write it?
So I wrote a book titled Beyond the Bell: Lessons High School Failed to Teach. And it really started because I had a bunch of students who were really kind of going after their dreams. And I found myself motivating them on a daily basis. And in my classroom, I teach public speaking, as I mentioned. I tell a lot of stories about growing up and hardships and overcoming things that, felt big when I was in high school, but I realized weren't maybe that tremendous, that I could have easily, pushed through if I just, believed in myself and trusted my gut. And so I started one night kind of writing the stories that I tell year after year in my class. It just kind of comes up. And I broke it down into 12 chapters, and each chapter is a lesson. And it's really a coming of age story. It's my personal stories coupled with the amazing things I've seen students do. And it's a motivational book, it's a self help book. And um, the end actually is an epilogue, and it's for parents, and it's about what I've learned over the years, that parents can do to support their teens, because this high school game it's a tough one.
It
It's a
is.
tough one.
It
It's a
seems as
tough
though the older kids get, the more stressed they're under. Because I remember when I was subbing, my favorite age or grade to sub was pre-K or even ECE,
one. Hmm.
because they would just hold my fingertips, or they would hold my fingers and follow me anywhere I went.
Right.
And I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to raise my voice. I didn't have to spend a lot of time worrying about behavior, because I would just say, "Oh, Mr. S isn't feeling good." And they would all come over and be extremely effusive and supportive. Yeah, you'd always have one kid who would sit in the corner and go crazy or whatever, and scream and everything. But for the most part, it was always manageable. It seems like the older they get, the more stressed they're under, or the more it's almost like they become 40 before they graduate from high school. Is that a fair comparison or an
Yeah.
exaggeration?
No, you know what it is? It is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of big decisions. It's a
Yeah,
lot of, especially I teach, like I said, mostly seniors. And, in some cases, they're making decisions, $100,000 decisions. And
about
meaning, what
college.
college
Yeah,
are they going to go to? And is this, then they're being forced to pick a major at 18 years old.
that's
And
crazy.
it's really, and as you grow, and I tell my students this all the time, you grow into what you're meant to do, and it's okay not to pick right away. It's okay to shift and change, and it's okay not to do what your parents think you should do, even though that might be uncomfortable, right? So these are the conversations that I've always found myself having, and the conversations kids need from someone other than their parents, because we know the parent voice sometimes, they're tired of it after a while, and they need another adult to kind of come in and say things differently.
Yeah, they can't
You know,
necessarily be objective. I mean, they can't be 100% objective. I don't know how they can.
right, of
You know,
course.
do you think, this is just my view of it, and I want to hear what you think. It seems that the price of college or education, the higher education, has gone up so much recently. Do you recommend what they used to call the 2+2 thing, where you'd graduate from high school, go to a community college for 2 years, and then a university for 2 years? What do you
Well,
think of that compared to other approaches?
you know what? I think that it's very individual. I think it's really depends on who you are as a person, and I stress this with my students. There's a lot of pressure to go to that big time school right out of high school. Parents feel the stress. They want to say my kid is going to, whatever school. They feel it's a judgment on their parenting if their kids can get into a great school and they can tell their friends that, hey, look what I was able to get my kid to do. But the reality of that is some kids need a gap year. Some kids need to
Yes.
hunker down at a
Yeah.
community school and kind of relearn and recommit to education. Um, and some kids are ready to roll. Some kids are ready to go. They've outgrown high school. They can't wait to dig into those college classes, and they're ready for those 4 years, and they're ready to commit to that major. They know what they want to do. They know where they're going. So I think that all ways of growing up are okay, but we have to let our young people choose. We have to let our young people navigate through it the way we all did and let go a little bit of the fear and the worry, especially as parents. I think as parents, you're right. It's very hard to be objective because you want, wouldn't it be nice if our kids just did exactly what we told them to do, right? But as parents, I think the best thing we can do is trust the job that we've done in raising them and let them choose so they can feel like they own their own lives. They own their own paths.
Yeah. Do you see what you're doing, like boots on the ground? Do you see what you're doing and all the other teachers, who you work with? Does that have an impact? I should say, what is the impact that what's going on with you guys, how that's impacting business owners right now?
Well, I think that teachers now more than ever are super creative. I think that teachers now more than ever are building in all different avenues of business, media, writing materials. It's not the traditional education that we had long ago. And I think because of that, because teachers are exposing kids to so many different things, I think it's feeding into the college level, and I think it's feeding into that business world because you're coming out with kids that are leaps and bounds above maybe where they were years ago. And I think the teachers are at the heart of that. We don't get stale. I'm not giving the same books I always did. We are building in my colleagues and I are building in podcasts. We're building in TED Talks. We're giving them all sorts of things and encouraging them to sink your teeth in to something and go for it. I mean, I had a student a year ago that started her own podcast and is off and running,
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, this is just, I believe good teachers are supporting kids in whatever they want to do. And I think that's going to definitely spill right into the business world, the workplace. And yeah.
On a related note, I wanted to ask your thoughts about motivation because I've heard this. I was talking to someone an hour ago, and the person was saying, if I look at the news, I have a hard time sleeping at night. It looks like everything's going to, hell in a handbasket, as they say. How do you, as a teacher, stay motivated and focused during this? But then also, how do you do that with your own children and then your own students?
Yeah. Well, I think we all have to be very careful about what we choose to consume. I think
Yeah.
our time is valuable, and it's a lot of this is a choice. Yes, you can get very much in totally weighed down by different things that are happening in our world. But historically, there's always been something happening in our world. If you really think about it, if you choose to focus on every single thing that our world has endured, how would you ever be positive? How would you ever believe in your dreams? How would you ever believe that you can come out of any of this? I think choosing very much what you want to consume is important. I also think that putting in the work and your energy into what you love is very important. I'll hear sometimes adults, even my age, say, oh, I always wanted to do this, but I wish I had my own business, but well, I think a lot of those things aren't happening because you're not focusing on them or you're not doing the work. People that are successful didn't wake up successful, right?
Yeah, it's very true. Very true.
Focusing and figuring out what you want to consume. And I'm a big believer, I tell my students this all the time, that if you're in the room with a bunch of people and you are finding that you're the smartest or most motivated person in that room, then you're in the wrong room. Think about who you surround yourself with and then and make sure they're going bigger than you are so they can push you.
Are there communities online that are like the way we're talking now, where you use Zoom or Skype or what have you? Are there communities online that are supportive and supporting students who are going through so much right now? And then does that exist as well for parents and teachers?
So I know that there are many podcasts that I direct my students to that are specifically for teens. One of them is Becoming. It's specifically a podcast for teens. I also direct them to the Fashion Your Passion podcast, which actually one of my students started, which is specifically for teens and thinking about your routines and
I'll write
thinking
that
about,
down.
yeah, thinking about your goals and really supporting your own dreams. And I personally, I'm a huge Ed Milet fan. The Ed Milet show is one I listen to daily. I think that there's so much out there that we can dive into. It's just about making the time and choosing to do it.
Yeah, it's just like reading.
Yeah.
If you want to write, I remember them always saying that if you want to write, then you have to read, and you should be reading
Yeah.
2 hours a day if you intend to write better, more precisely, more accurately. I wanted to also ask you about where do you see things heading like in the next 5 to 6 months? What does it look like it's shaping up for right now?
Yeah, I wish I had the answer to that one too. I'm thinking that we're going to, there's a lot of different opinions on this. Like I said, I'm hoping that we as educators are moving in the direction of getting back to our full-time classrooms with our
Yeah.
students on a full-time basis and really having a community in front of us that is more appreciative of the community and is grateful for the education that they're able to get in a classroom, because I think we are all going to be changed a bit from this pandemic. A lot of other people have opinions that in a few weeks we're all going to be home learning virtually again, that we're going to have another outbreak. So I don't know where we're going to head in the next month or two, but I do believe that either way, people are going to be appreciative of each other, community, relationships, and realize that that is really the most important thing about all of the things we do, all the businesses, all of the education that we provide. The relationships are at the heart of all of it.
I really only have one more question for you, and it's kind of a step beyond what you just said. It really seems to me, whether you're a teacher or a parent or a student for that matter, empathy is such a huge, huge thing that it's like you have it or you don't, but you always need it.
Mhm.
What can people do? And it's not only students, it's not only the teachers, it is certainly not only the parents, but I mean, what can we do to increase that ability to be more empathic? Because it just seems like everything's so polarized now. You're either on this one side or this other side. I've given up on talking about politics to everybody. I just say, if you really want to know where I stand, I'll tell you. But, it's not going to be, it's not something, it's always confrontational. How do
Yeah.
we increase that empathy for teachers, for parents, for students, and then that's going to go into the larger society as a whole.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that if you're going through something, whatever it is, whatever struggle you're going through, you have to just meet people and assume that they are going through something as well. And it's hard to do sometimes when people are nasty, when they're short, when you feel like they're not providing you with what you need. It's really easy to point a finger and blame, but I think at the heart of that is typically that person is struggling too, and to give them grace and to realize that if you're struggling, if you're having a problem, if you're finding this whole thing overwhelming, 99% of the time, so is the person you're dealing with. And you have to meet each other
Hmm.
halfway. You just have to, like I said, it's easy to get angry, but what good is that? The other thing I think it's just so important is that, and it's funny that you said, how difficult it is sometimes to talk to people that are
Right.
in such a different headspace than you are, whether it's politics or even the coronavirus. People are feeling, like people, some people think it's over, we're overreacting. Other people feel we need to wear a mask. This is scary. And it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you listen, you hear people out, and hopefully you'll learn something and maybe be able to grow from whatever it is they have to share with you. I think that politics is a perfect example. If you are so frustrated by someone else's opinion, that's really on you. You have to be open. If everyone was like you certainly wouldn't have a very interesting world. So you got to give the people a chance and hear them out and be open to it. You don't have to agree with them, but you just might learn something new that you didn't think of before. And that to me is growth. And if without that, you really don't have much. So yeah, that's what I would say. I would say that meet people where they are, be open to what they have to say, and understand we're all struggling a bit. Not only now, just in life, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's it's not going to change overnight. Let me ask you, if people watching or listening, everybody knows that teachers are always underfunded. It always has been that way ever since I can remember. If anybody watching or listening wants to try to help out, teachers who are not getting enough money for supplies, what can they do? Are there any websites that you could recommend?
I'm not sure specifically right now what schools have organized at this point, but I know GoFundMe is always a great resource. A lot of different organizations will do things there, even if there's certain students in need. And I know that a lot of inner city schools often do collections, book collections. So I would say a quick Google search will give you that information. And also when teachers have a list of supplies, just even fulfilling that list of supplies is so helpful. And typically on the bottom, they'll say, we always love donations of, if you have the means, send in the hand sanitizer, send in the Clorox wipes, the tissues. That stuff really does help make the classroom run, and it keeps the kids, having what they need for the year.
Yeah. Well, listen, I really, really appreciate your time. If listeners or viewers want to get in touch with you or take a look at your book, how can they do that?
So you can find me on Instagram at Pyrch Gets Published, where you'll find my ongoing journey of trying to find a literary agent for my book and hopefully get that into bookstores. Hopefully at some point in the near future. And you could also check out my website at melissapyrch.com.
So we just want to make sure that we spell it's Pyrch.
You got it. It's Pyrch.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to make sure, because I don't want people going in and typing in Melissa Perch or something. Okay.
Right.
So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it. For anybody watching or listening, thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this video or this podcast, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Every little bit helps. And please tune into the next episode as well as I untangle this cord. So, Melissa, please stick around for another minute, and I'll go ahead and end this. And thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Rebooting Business, the podcast for, about, and by America's small business owners who are ready to reboot and rebuild businesses in a post-COVID-19 world. To learn more about rebooting your business or be a guest on the podcast, please visit www.dms.blue today.